So today's Daf Yomi dedicated for Shmira for all of Am Yisrael, Yeshua for the hostages, Hatzalah for the Chayalim, and davening for a better world. So we're going to start today's Daf Yomi on the bottom of 88b. Just a little bit of an introduction that yesterday's Gemara was discussing a story, the story of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Abba, whose mother had tried to give away her nichsei malug to her son while she was still married to her husband, and she said, "I'm giving it to my son." Now that means that she owned the property, but her husband had the fruits to the property. So she tried to say, "After I die, it'll go to my son." And even though Rav Shmuel Bar Abba's brother, Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba, said that he was able to do it, nevertheless, Rav Yehuda ruled like Shmuel, and he said it wasn't allowed. So what's the reason why it wasn't allowed? So the Gemara suggested a mahalach yesterday, but then at the end of the daf, the Gemara said the reason why it's not allowed is because of takanas usha. That even though in general we would say that just the fact that the husband has the rights to kinyan aperos, to the fruits, that someone who owns the rights to fruits doesn't mean that they own the essence. And if you own the essence, you could still sell it even though you don't own the fruits or give it away. But in Usha, they made a takana that a wife is not able to do that to her assets, that her husband controls the fruits, because that'll cause animosity. So 3 lines from the bottom. The Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, but Usha iskinu. In Usha, they instituted a Isha Shemachar b'nichsei malug b'chaye bawa, a woman who sold her nichsei malug. That means the property, the plucking. She gets to pluck out that the husband gets to pluck out the fruits, and she sells the property while her husband's still alive. Umesa, and then she died. Habal motzi miyad alakuchos. The husband is allowed to come and take it back. It's not 100% clear from the Gemara. Does the husband have to reimburse the person who bought it or not? But it's a side question. The main point is, and who should have instituted? She, even if she sells it, he can get it back. Meaning to say that even though in general we say kinyan Paris is lav, kinyan aguftami, with respect to marriage, you can't do it. And Amarav Adabar Avin, Afanan Nami Tanina. So Rav Adabar Avin says, we have a brisa to support the fact that we say this concept called takanas usha. And the concept is as follows. We learned in the brisa, the proof from that the brisa rules like takanas usha, is they say, witnesses come and they say, we testify by ishboni, we testify about this man, shegirish es ishto. We testify that this man divorced his wife, v'nasan ksuvasa. We testify that this man divorced his wife, and in fact, he gave her a ksuva. V'arei tachtav. But we see that these witnesses are lying. She never got a ksuva. Not only did she never get a ksuva, she's still married to him. Umishamashto. She's acting as his wife. V'nimtzu zomamin. And so then we discover these witnesses are edim zomamin, which means they pay the value of what they tried to take away from her. So what did these witnesses try to take away from her? They said she got her ksuba, but she never got her ksuba. So let's say her ksuba was $100,000. Were they trying to defraud her of $100,000? Not necessarily, because if she died before her husband, or if her husband never divorced her and she died first, then she would never have collected the ksuba. It's only the potential to collect $100,000 if that's what her ksuba is worth, if her husband would die first or divorce her. So therefore, we say, Ein Omer Mishamenu Kol Ksuvasa. We don't say that that these witnesses have to pay her the whole value of the ksuba. Ela Tovas Hana Ksuvasa. Rather, they have to pay her what the value of that ksuba is. In Ezu Tovas Hana Ksuvasa. What is the value of that ksuba? How do we determine it? Omdin Kama Adam wrote saying, Litain B'Ksuvasa Shalzu, Shem Nisarmo Niskarsha. V'Mesa Yerushana Bawa. So we evaluate, says the Brisa, how much would a person be willing to give to this ksuva, knowing that when does she collect the ksuva? If she's widowed or if she's divorced, then she collects it. But if she dies, her husband inherits it. So how much would the ksuba be worth right now as a commodity? V'in is garsha. So the Gemara says, usha, and if you would say that there's no such thing as takonas usha, why do we say the husband wouldn't necessarily inherit it? Tizabin ksuvasa, there is no worry that the husband would inherit it because she could always sell her ksuva completely to the gamri. And so therefore, this proves that we say, since the Bride says the husband's for sure going to inherit her if she's not widowed or divorced, then we see from here that she can't sell it. And that's the proof text for the Takonos Usha. Gemara says, no, Amar Abaye, no, maybe that's Im Amar B'nichse Malug, Yomer B'nichse Tzon Barzal. No, there are two aspects to what there are two types of property that a woman brings into the marriage. The property that she brings in can either be designated as what we call Nechse Malug, or it can be designated as Nechse Tzon Barzal. Tzon Barzal property is property where the woman brings in, and she says, when the marriage terminates, we establish the value of the property at the outset of the marriage, and you have to give me that value, regardless of whether the property goes up or goes down. I'm bringing this apartment building. It's $1 million. That's what you have to give me. The apartment building goes up to 20 million. She still gets $1 million. So we see from here that under these circumstances, that if we want to say whether or not we say Takonos Usha by Nechse Malug is totally separate from whether we say by Nechse Tzon Barzal, because the Nechse Tzon Barzal property is clearly the husband's. So for sure she wouldn't have the right to sell that. So that's what for sure that would go back to the husband if he dies. So that could be what the Bryce is referring to, and not necessarily the Nechse Malug. So it's not necessarily an indication of the Takonos Usha. Amar Abaye. So now Abaye says Tova Sana, this concept called Tova Sana. Hold the also Yadon, since we're discussing it, name above mil. So let's say something about it. Tova Sana Isha Hava. The Tova Sana, a woman who sells her ksuba and she sells it to somebody else, the Tova Sana of the ksuba, the woman gets this money and the husband doesn't get the right to touch this money. If we're going to say that it goes to the husband, then if we're going to say that it goes, if we're going to say that the Tova Sana money goes back to the husband, the witnesses could actually say to the woman, these Adam Zoma witnesses, what do we actually cost you money for? Excuse me, even if you said, oh, you cost me what I could have sold the right to sell my ksuba for, but you wouldn't have got that money. That money wasn't going to you. That was going to your husband. So we didn't cost you any money. So Amar Rav Shalman, yes, you did. Mishum de'ika revach beisa. You cost her money because even though the woman doesn't directly own the money, if the household has a lot of money, it's to her benefit. Amarava hilchasa tova sana isha. Not only is the halacha that the woman gets the tova sana, let's say the value of the ksuba that they could sell for tova sana is, let's say, $10,000. Ve'ena about ochel peros, and not only that, we don't say that we have to take that $10,000 buy real estate, and he gets the peros from that real estate. We don't say that, and he gets the fruits from that. No, she gets everything. My time up, because what's the reasoning? Peira takino rabbanon. When did the rabbis say that from that the property can be designated as nilchse malug? That's when they're fruits, but peira to peira. But if it's the fruits of the fruits, lo takino rabbanon, then the rabbis did not institute it. And here, what this means is that if it's something that comes directly from the property, that's called fruits. But if it's something that's a side issue, like this is something like a tova sana that she's getting, that's going to be called something that's called the fruits of the fruits, and that's not something that the husband has access to. He says, I'll give you a different source for Takonos Usha or a Mishnah. And this is why we're citing this whole discussion. And what's the source? This is the Mishnah that we had on 87a. Ha'isha, it said in the Mishnah, Ha'eved va'isha pegiyasan rav. Somebody encounters a slave or a woman in a damages situation, you're always going to come off worse than the slave and the woman, because you have to pay them, but they don't pay you. One who wounds them is liable. But if they wound you, they're paturin, they're exempt. But if you want to say there's no such thing as takonas usha, tizabin let her sell her nechse malug and give it to him. So this proves from the fact that we don't force her to sell her nechse malug. This proves that the woman, that there is such a thing as takonas usha. Gemara says, wait, that he say with takonas usha, according to your logic, that since there's takonas usha, v'lamati mizamna l'gabri. And so therefore, even according to your logic, it doesn't make sense, because you want to say that there's takonas usha, and so therefore she can't completely sell it, but still, let her sell the nechse malug under the rubric of tova sana. Meaning say, let her sell the value of what my ksuba will be worth if I collect, and it's worth something. The whole ksuba is worth $100,000, so the speculative, based upon the health of the husband, let's say it's worth $20,000. And so then she would get that, and she could pay the person who she wounded. Mar says, no, she can't do that. Why? Her money, because we're going to say that this is the position of Rebbe Meir. This is the position of Rebbe Meir. The Amar Aser Lo Adam she can't sell her ksuba for tova sana, because Rebbe Meir says the person's prohibited to remain married to his wife even for one moment without a ksuba, and so therefore she wouldn't be able to do it. Gemara says, "But time am I? But what's the reason for Rebbe Meir that you can't sell that a woman?" A man is not allowed to be married to his wife without a ksuba, because we want to make it difficult for him to divorce her. And so therefore we want him to recognize if he's going to have to divorce her, it's going to cost a lot of money. But here, even though she doesn't have the ksuba, he's still not going to divorce her, because if he divorces her, also the person who bought her the rights to collect her ksuba is going to come and collect the ksuba mine from the husband. So this should be an exception to that rule. So therefore, Ella Tova Sana Mili Ninhu. No, so what's the reason why we don't force her to sell her ksuba? It's because Tova Sana is Mili, meaning it's a speculative venture. Mili lo mishtabdi, and you can't have a lien on the speculative venture. And so therefore we can't force her to sell the rights to collect the ksuba in order to pay the wound. Gemara says, why not? I'm alone. Mili Why not? This has a value. This is mili. It has a value on it. You could sell it. It's a commodity. So the reason why we don't force her to sell it is because there's a separate law. And Shmuel said one who sells his IOU note to his friend, and then he goes ahead and waives the note that his friend had on him, meaning to say Reuven has a note on Shimon for $100. He sells it to Levi for $50. And then Reuven says, you know what? I waive it. Shimon, you don't owe me the money anymore. The note said that Shimon owes Reuven, but Reuven sold that note to collection to Levi. And now Reuven wants to waive it. It's waived. Even Reuven's heir can waive it. So in this case, the woman could waive the collection. So therefore, that's why we're going to say we don't force her to sell. Gemara says, but why? Amri zabune zabin v'titin. Why? Why not? Why don't we say let her sell her ksuba for the tova sana, and she'll get the money and she'll give it to the person she wounded. Gabe bao tamacha, and then if she wants to waive the rights of her husband if she wants to waive her rights to force her husband to pay the ksuba, let her waive it. The Gemara says no, because kol gabe bao vada mechalei. We say since it's her husband is the one who would have to pay the ksuba, let's say for sure she's going to waive her claim against her husband, and then the guy who she sold the ksuba to is really going to be hurt. So the Gemara says, but still, and we don't want to directly. I mean, now we're really causing the guy who bought the rights to her ksuba is really directly causing him money, because for sure she's going to waive the claim she has against her husband. And if you want to say, well, why don't we say let her sell the ksuba to the person she wounded for the value of what it's worth? The top of 89b, and if she then goes and waives the rights of her husband to pay her the ksuba, still, because why don't we say let her? What's the loss? Because even now, she's not giving him anything. So at least let her make her go through the process of saying I'm waiving it to my husband. What are we actually costing him for making her do this? The Gemara says, well, the problem is we don't want to annoy the courts. So if kol gabe bao vada mechala, we know it's a certainty that she's going to waive the claims that her husband has that she has against her husband for the ksuba. And we're not going to force the courts to go through this process for nothing. So the Gemara says, so your logic is that the reason why we don't force the woman to sell the ksuba for tova sana to the person she damaged, because she's for sure going to waive her rights to collect the ksuba from her husband. Well, if that's the case, what about the following brayse? So let's say she wounded her husband. She does not lose her ksuba. Amai, why doesn't she lose her ksuba? So now the case is, let's say the person she wounded was her husband, Rahman al-Atzlan. So now she should not. Let's say she damaged her husband, she wounded her husband, she should not lose her ksuba. That's what it says in the braysa, that if she damaged her husband, she doesn't lose her ksuba. Meaning to say, we don't say that she has to pay for the wound from the ksuba. That's the braysa, because it says that we don't force the woman to pay. But why not? Why don't we force her to pay? Why don't we say that she should sell the rights to collect the ksuba to her husband under this concept of tova sana, b'ha'chabala, and in exchange to pay for the wound that she owes her, because even if she'll then say to her husband, "Oh, I waive the rights that I have against the ksuba," well, wake up, say that the husband doesn't lose anything because he's the one who doesn't have to pay. Where says no, thou will apply the principle of Reb Meir, who says, and a man is not allowed to remain married to his wife even for one moment without a ksuba. And so therefore, under these circumstances, he's creating a scenario where once he wounds her, he doesn't have to pay the ksuba. It'll be very easy to divorce her. The Gemara says, what's the reasoning? So that the reasoning is that what's the reason for Reb Meir's principle? So that it's not so easy to divorce her. But in this case, megarishla, let him divorce her. V'gabilei b'chavolamine, let him divorce her, and then it's not going to be difficult for him to divorce her, because he can then collect the money that she owes him from the wound, and so therefore what? And so therefore that shouldn't be a problem. The Gemara says, no, if that would be the case, Hashtanami Megarishla. Also now it will be easy to divorce her because even though he has to pay the ksuba, nevertheless, he has the wound. And so if he has to pay the ksuba, he's still going to collect the money for the wound in the end. So the Gemara says, no, we're talking about a case where the ksuba is way more than the value of the wound. Kigon, the nafish b'ksuvasa, the mishuma uporta mafsituva. The ksuba is worth way more than the wound. So he's not going to divorce or pay the ksuba just to collect the small damages from the wound. Gemara says, "Ve'i the nafesh ksuvasa miksuva diaraisa." Gemara says, "I'll give a different scenario. There is something called a ksuva diaraisa, which means to say that this was a basic ksuba, but there's also some people who added on, and they had a much greater ksuba. Let's say her specific ksuba that she was owed is much greater than the standard ksuba. So if that's the case, let her reduce." If she wounds him, let her reduce the amount of the ksuba to a ksuba diaraisa, which is the minimum amount that a husband had to give according to the rabbis. Be the navish ksuva to ksuba diaraisa, nukma ksuva diaraisa, v'idach tizabena niwe b'chavay, and the rest of it she should pay to him in exchange for the wound. So why don't we say that she pays under those circumstances? Gemara says no. What we're talking about is the situation can go into lo nafisha ksuvasa miksuva diaraisa. Another case of the Gemara is where her ksuva is not greater. She doesn't have a larger ksuva. Because let's say the wound means she owes him 4 zuz. The mishum arba zuze, because of the wound that she owes him 4 zuz, will mafsid esrim v'chamisha. So we're not going to make him, because of the wound that she owes him of 4 zuz, he's not going to divorce her, because by divorcing her, he's going to lose the value of the ksuba, which is 25 slime, which is 100 zuz, and so therefore it's not going to work. So the Gemara says, but that what you explained that she could sell off the rest of the ksuba to her husband to pay for the wound. Just like it says, so that which it says in the Brisa, just like a woman is not able to sell her ksuba to other people when she's still married to the husband. Kacho tafsid. So too she can't lose the ksuba while she's still married to him. And the Gemara understands at this point that the intent of this price or this toseft is to say that she can never lose the value of the ksuba, even if she wounds him. And if you're saying that in a case where she has a great ksuba, she could lose it. Where she has a large ksuba, and she wounds him, she can end up losing it. So how would you explain the brisa? So Rava says, Seifa, this Tosefta is referring to Asan le Ksuvas binin different. It's not referring to where there's a very large ksuba, but it's referring to a specific type of ksuba. It's called the Ksuvas binin different. The Ksuvas binin different is a ksuba that was instituted. Basically, it was an agreement to make sure that if she has her own sons coming into the marriage, or she wants to make sure that in the event that she dies first, her money that she brings into marriage is first divided up to her children when the husband's estate is divided up, and is not split in the general pool with any subsequent marriages' children. And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a case of ksubas benin dichrin, v'achai katani. And this is what the price is telling us. Kashem shem mocheres ksuba salacherem. And just like if she sells the ksuba, she forced to sell the ksuba for whatever reason. Basically, if she becomes widowed or divorced, and she has to sell the ksuba, she doesn't lose the rights to the ksuba spin banin dichrin, that's still able to be collected. My timer, Zuze Yehuda Anse, because we say that she was short of money, and that forced her to sell, and she didn't intend to completely lose out on her children to collect that portion of the estate. Also, if she sells it back to her husband, you can't take that money out from the ksuvas banin dichrin. My timer, because it was clearly just done out of a sale, out of a forced circumstances, and so that money is protected. So the Gemara says, "Bolema takanas usha tanayi." Let's say whether or not we've instituted takanas usha as in the chokas tanayim, whether or not we say this concept that the woman cannot sell the property that the husband has the rights to. It's in the chokas tanayim. The tanicha, the one brisa taught, Avdei Mulug. Let's say she brings in Canaanite slaves to her husband as what's this property called Nechse Mulug. The husband owns a slave and the man gets the right to use them. Yotzin V'shein V'ayin Isha. And then if the woman would knock out their tooth or the eye, they would go free if the woman knocks them out because she presumably still owns them. So that's not like takanas usha. Yotzin l'shem v'ayin l'isha, avol lo ish, but not if the man does it. V'tanya idach, and the brisa says the opposite, lo ish v'lo isha, and the other brisa says that they don't go out to the man or the woman, meaning to say this is like takanas usha. She doesn't really own them. So savru the kol yalma kinyan peres lap kinyan agutami. Everybody says. So the Gemara's assumption is that everybody's in a position that just because you have the rights to use it, the kinyan peros, that's not like you own it. And Bava Kamma. Okay, what's the argument? Manda Amar Isha, the one who says that if the woman knocks them out, they go free. It's like takanas usha. They don't hold like takanas usha. Manda Amar lo isha is like takanas usha. And the one who says that they don't go free if the man or the woman knock them out, they hold like takanas usha. The Gemara says lo. The kuyama is like takanas usha. Everybody says like takanas usha. Now Lakan called them takana, where it says that they go free if the woman knocks them out. That price was taught before the takana. The other price was taught after the takana. By same or alternatively, both cases took place after takanas issue. Usha, the islu takanas usha. Everybody holds like it. The one who says they go free if the woman knocks them out. Hello ish. My time. What's the reasoning? Kedarava, the amarava. Rava taught hektish chametz v'shichur, that in a case where you consecrate something or something was chametz and Pesach came, v'shichur, or freeing a slave, mafkimi de shibut. So even though the husband has a lien on it, she can free the slave. So it's a special exemption to override takanas usha because of the slave. So the Gemara says. The Rava tonight. So do you want to say that this machokas of Rava, whether or not we say that mafkin, that freeing the slave, that the shikhr is mafkin mideshi, but it's machokas tanoim? First says no. The kula yama islu the Rava. Everybody agrees with Rava. Hacha mura bana shibude debao. And here in this case, the rabbi said that that everybody in general holds like Rabbanan, but the question is the Rabbanan would say that the slave doesn't go free. Because they say that in this case, the shibud of the Baal is very strong. The lien of the husband is very strong. Or alternatively, everybody does not agree. Everybody does not agree with takanas usha. The question is, will they go back to the dispute between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, whether or not we say the fact that the husband owns the paros, it's like he owns the kinyan aglav. Okay, we'll stop here. It's beautiful discussion. It's beautiful Gemara. Shkoyach, everybody have a great day.